Hi everyone, I welcome you all into this Dell Boomi session. So basically in the last session, we talked about, again, we continue talking about integration with Salesforce, and the part which we emphasized on is the how to manage relationships while doing the integration, right? And in the process of doing so, we talked about connector call in the map shape, right? So whenever there is some relationship, right, between two different objects in Salesforce, let's say there is a object accounts and there is a object contacts, okay, and there has to be some relationship, right? So that relationship internally, so for example, you might see accounts. In accounts, you can see something like primary contact, okay, and that primary contact may be, let's say, Sumit Agarwal. But then this data typically will not be stored in accounts, right? This might be a lookup on contacts object, where in contacts object there might be some ID, some like thing like this, and there'll be some name, Sumit Agarwal, right? So this value from here is getting populated in accounts, right? And behind the scene, when we just try to query down the accounts object, what exactly we'll get to see? When we'll query the accounts object, what do we get to see at the backend for the contact field?
Logged in username.
Record ID.
We will see the record ID. Okay, so when we'll go into the account and we'll see contact, we'll see the record ID, which is this one, isn't it? Yesterday also we saw same thing now when we were doing with the parent account. In the UI we could see the name, but behind the scene there was some record ID of that account, isn't it? What I'm trying to tell you is, if you go to account, the same topic we discussed now yesterday. I don't know why people are so confused. And this is an account. Let's say I open United Oil and Gas Singapore. So if you see here, it has a relationship with contacts. It has two contacts which are related to this. If you go back to the account, United Oil and Gas Singapore, right? In the details, you can see account details, billing address, shipping address, last modified, and all that stuff. That is fine. But under related, you can see there are two contacts. So let me create a new account. Okay, let me explain you this way. So contact, let's say name is Mr. Sumit Agarwal. Now here you see the account name. So now when I will query the contact object, what value you will see there in the account name? For example, I save this stuff. My question is, for this contact with the name Sumit Agarwal, if I go down and if I query from the workbench, let's say, right, what value will be visible for account?
Record ID.
Account ID.
Record ID, not account ID.
Record
It
ID.
is record ID of this United Oils and Gas. This one, this ID should be visible. Okay. I hope this is clear. Any doubts?
It's clear.
All right. So what we'll do is we'll go and we'll just log in into the platform. Log in into the platform and we'll just try to take the process forward. So how many different types of components have we covered? or how many different types of components do you know about right now?
Profile, map.
Process, profile, map.
Very nice. You know about process is a component, core component, profile, another component, map, one more component. Very nice. What else?
Connection.
Connector.
Operation.
Very nice. Connection. What else?
Operation.
Connection and operation. Connect.
Anything else?
Cross-reference
Cross-reference
table.
table. Yes, you know about cross-reference table also. So I think these are the 6 different types of components you are aware about, right? So today we'll talk about one more new component, and that component will be document cache. Okay. So we'll look into that. So at what point we left, if you remember,
We need to
left,
get
Created an
data from
file.
revenue.
yes, so we created a file, and how did that file look like? Accounts revenue was the name of the file. This is the file which was created, right? In this file we had the revenue details, and there was an ID detail. This ID was more like a Salesforce record ID, isn't it? And you have the revenue amount. So now the idea is that whatever data we are getting from here, right? So if you remember, let me run this. Okay, this is what is happening. So right now, how many documents are going to the database?
One.
One. And the name is United Oils and Gas Singapore. And what is the ID? This is the ID, isn't it? There is a parent account, there is a phone number, and we have to pass the revenue also. Now let's assume that this file which we have opened has the revenue amount for this. Okay. And using this file, we have to pull the revenue amount and we have to push it into the database. So now, like few people were giving some suggestions yesterday. Now you tell me, what are your suggestions? How can we do this?
Sumit, I tried doing using like I started with storing those values in DDP.
DDP, okay.
Yeah, but what happened is when after storing those values, when I get connected again with Salesforce, the DDP value was not storing after that.
Correct.
Yes.
Even I tried the same thing. It was not coming.
So what I did is I used DPP. I used it in a map, but it is only for one account. Later I used lookup. I have created a cross-reference table for those two, and then it is very easy, I felt.
No, but what did you store in the cross-reference lookup? Cross-reference lookup.
Account ID and revenue I have stored. From map shape I have done lookup.
But the point is we can't store it the file, the data will be stored in the file only.
I just got that file through like dots. It's an XML file, but I did with CSV file and I imported in cross-reference table.
No, we can't do like that. I mean, we can't change the business requirements.
Okay.
Okay, because cross-reference table, you loaded one file, that's okay. But this file will keep on changing, right? Every day, maybe every day or every month. And there may be a lot of accounts which get added, and this file might be produced by some other system. This is not something which is kind of a master data. Okay, cross-reference table, we generally keep the master data, which will not change so frequently, or which is not produced by some other system typically. So for example, if you have to store the state information, like I was doing one integration between Salesforce and SAP, both have a different mechanism of representing the same states. So that kind of information typically will not change, but so I can store that into a cross-reference table and I can pull that data from the cross reference table whenever I want to do an integration. But for these kind of requirements, you cannot change things, right? So somebody told that DDP was not accessible. That is right. So, when you call any of the application connectors, right?
Okay.
After that, your DDP document gets changed. Okay, a new document gets created and you lose your DDPs.
But even if you try in another branch, like if you take a branch before after try catch shape, and in first branch if you execute that file and get the DDP values, even though in the second branch we can't use it, right?
Yeah, it will not. So it is available as long as the document is available. Okay, once the document gets modified, it will not be available. But actually, the problem is, even if somehow, let's say you are able to store the values and all, the problem with this is, first of all, there can be n number of accounts, right? Right now we are talking about one account, but in real time there can be thousands or millions of accounts also. And whenever we have to establish the relationship, right? Because we just don't want to store the value which is coming from the file, but also we should have a capacity, or we should have an ability which allows us to do a lookup on the basis of this ID, isn't
Yes,
it?
I did with business. I have added even business rule shape for that.
And how will business rule shape help you to
Yes,
pull the,
there I was getting DDP ID from this XML file, revenue file, but the problem is DDP that account ID was not storing.
I mean, even if it gets stored, how will you pull this data revenue?
I have stored even this also in one more DDP value.
Okay, and how will you do a correlation?
From map shape, I thought of getting that revenue value.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe you can give it a try. I think this
No,
GDP
I
will not.
tried, but the problem was I was not able to store DDP after Salesforce. It was expiring.
Right. I mean, that is a common challenge you will face with the DDP. So DDP will go away as soon as the document goes away or a new document ID gets generated, because those are tied to a document, right? But then for these kind of requirements, ideally we use a concept called as cache. Okay. We use a concept called cache. Cache is a temporary memory. Okay. So from Boomi standpoints, it is like in-memory data only. So you might have heard of this word cache earlier also. Your browsers will have cache, right? Some of the URLs or the recently accessed pages will be stored. Sometimes, you will have some instructions of the on the website. Please clear cache, right? So this is same cache, but it works a little different in Boomi. So in Boomi, you might have observed by now that documents moves from one shape to another. Your document format keeps on changing, and sometimes the original format which came in, you might want to reserve that format that might be required later on. That may have some important information which is required at a later stage. We try to use a branch shape, which somehow helps us to create a copy of the document so that we can use it later on. But even branch shape is not helpful always, especially whenever you will get use cases, and these kind of use cases will be numerous. Whenever you get use cases where you have two different data sets and you have to combine these two data sets, right? You have to establish the relationship between these two data sets. Then the component which will help you to achieve that is a cache component. Okay, so I'll write a note whenever we have two or more different data sets which are required to be combined together, then we recommend the use of cache to achieve such use cases. Okay, and the name of the component is document cache. Now one thing, let's say there is a data set A Okay, and there is a data set B. Same is the case with us also. Data set A is not nothing but the one which is coming from Salesforce, and then there is data set B which is coming from file system, right? So to read the file, which connector should we use?
Disk.
Very nice, disk connector. Now, when these two data sets are required to be combined for any for any requirement which involves the merging of the data or establishing the relation between the data, what is that most important key which is required and without which we cannot do that merging?
Mapping.
Primary, like any key which is common.
A correlation key. Very nice. A correlation key, because if you have to combine two things together, there has to be at least one entity or a combination of few entities that helps us to establish the correlation, right? Isn't it? Here there is something, but how will you establish the correlation? Now, in our case, which is that key that is helping us to establish the correlation?
ID.
So from this standpoint, it is ID, and from this one,
Account
it
ID.
account ID, right? So if you see the values in the file, we created a field account ID, which is as good as ID of this, and these both can be considered as a correlation key, and using this correlation key, we will try to establish a relationship between the data, right? So now, since we understand this, and believe me, you whenever you're working in any real-time project, these kind of requirements are mandatory. I mean, you will not have a single project where you will not have these kind of requirements. So this document cache component is very, very important to understand. A lot of people get confused about this component. Please do not get confused. Try to use this more frequently and you will establish a good understanding gradually, right? So now what I'm trying to say is, at a given point in time, right, in a map shape, so eventually when we will do the merging and all, or anything for that matter, we have to convert the data from source format to target format. Yes. Target. So generally when we want to achieve this, which shape we use map shape, right? So in map shape, how many source formats can we import?
One.
5.
5 types of.
I mean,
5 times. Oh,
yeah. I mean, okay, 5 types of format. That is correct. But at a time, how many format? Or only one?
one.
Or in other words, if I'll remove this format word, this might be confusing. Okay, how many different sources can I have at a given time in the map shape? Only one, right?
One.
Right. Who said two? I mean, two may be the right answer, but how can we do two? Can you explain? Okay, so as far as what we have covered, we can take only one in the source, one in the target. You get an option to choose the profile, right? Here you give one profile. In target, you give another profile and you do the mappings. But now in this case, when we want to do the mapping to the target, will we have all the information in one source?
No.
No. So there are two ways. One is there are two possibilities to achieve this. One is that this map shape allows us to have two different profiles in source. When I say two different profiles, what do I mean? Two different profiles means of the same type. Okay, it does not mean that one will be XML and another will be of JSON. Two different profiles means two profiles, that's all. I will not write difference. Again, people will get confused. One possibility is the map shape allows us to have two profiles in the source, which we are not sure. Second thing is we create a source profile which already has the combined data, right? So if you remember, other day we created some temporary profile. Do you remember that when I was explaining an example where an element was not going as an empty element, then I had to create an intermediary profile, right? And that intermediary profile was used while doing the mapping with the target.
Yes.
Yes. So these are the only two possibilities we have, right? That we create a new source profile which already has the combined data from two data sets, isn't it? So now we will see how is it possible. So now we go and we read the data. So this is my one data set, right? Where I have the information about the account. Now which is the information I need that is missing? Revenue, right? But revenue. But for that, first of all, if you remember, I need to refresh my database profile.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, don't create database profiles and all manually. Always do this method only. What was the name of the object?
APR underscore
Score
account.
accounts.
Okay. APR underscore counts. Next. Okay, we see a new column which was not there in the profile, that is revenue. Next. Finish. Yes, so this is done. This is done. Now I go back to the map shape. In a map shape, we have revenue, right? But this is representing that which data set? The data set which is coming from the file or from the Salesforce?
Salesforce.
Salesforce.
Okay. Now we don't have a mechanism to get one more profile, right? Because if I go to choose, this profile will get overridden. So first of all, we will read the data which is coming from one more data source, right? So what I'll do is right after this try, I'll add a branch shape. Is branch shape sequential or parallel?
Sequential.
It is sequential, right? And what is the sequence it follows?
Now, one will execute first and then second.
Very nice. One will execute first and then second. So now I added a branch shape. Now this is the last thing I would want to do, right? Isn't it? I mean, this final mapping, the data goes into the database. So whatever I have to do to achieve my required functionality has to happen before this branch, because this I would want to be the last branch, because here I have my map shape. Yes. So what I'll do is I'll go to the first one and here I'll add a disconnector. In the disconnector, I'll choose connection. Okay. Disk we already created. Yes, we added a dummy connection. Why did we add a name dummy connection?
We
So
had
that we
a
can
dummy
use that in extensions.
So that we are forced to use extensions, right? So right now we'll keep this only. Okay. And what about the operation?
Create.
We want to read the file. What is the name of the file, guys?
Accounts revenue.
Accounts revenue. Nice. So I'll go here and can I write accounts revenue.xml? Yes. Save and close. So I think there is nothing new we have done so far. This is something which you're already aware of. Okay. So you go to the stop shape here. What you're trying to do in the first branch, you're trying to
Get the
read
data.
the XML file.
read the file which has got revenue amount. Okay. And since you want to test this first, or this one we don't want to test, what we can do, we can just remove this connection for the time being.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Because unnecessarily I don't want to pull the data all the time and don't want to push it into the database, right? That does not make sense.
I guess connection. In
Mhm.
this connection, we did not give the address.
Yeah, I know we didn't give. So what we have to do is there is an option called as test extensions, but in the connection settings I don't see anything. So what I'll do is I'll go to the extensions and I'll say in the disk use the extensions. Okay. In disk, use the extensions, and while testing, what I'll do is I'll override this. Can I write like this?
Yes.
Yes. Where is my file? In the D drive? In the D drive, right? So let us try if it works. And there is one humble request. I see there are people who join one day who do not join other day. They join at 9:25, 9:30. It's better you complete your sleep if you cannot join by 9 o'clock. Okay. At least one thing you will get properly, na? Either your sleep or subject. So it's better you don't join if you are late. You at least complete your sleep so that at least you feel that you have achieved something, right? Because halfway you will feel the teacher is not telling nicely because you will not understand anything, but you will never realize that you were always late in the session and that's why you're not understanding anything. Okay, so if you feel that you were not able to wake up at the right time, better you continue sleeping, and whenever you feel there is a need to learn, you can wake up. I don't know how people will be so careless about all these things. They'll come to me and say that we are not getting job, we want to get job and all. And then at 9 o'clock also people can't wake up. When I used to study, we used to go at 6 o'clock in the Amir Pit classrooms. I don't know. Okay, there is accounts data where we have two different account. This is being read, right? Perfect. Now what I want to do is just understand this. We go to the map shape. In the map shape, we are doing all the mapping except revenue. So now you tell me the data which is coming from the file, right? And the one which is coming from the Salesforce, which key is common between both?
ID.
ID. Very nice. So using this ID, I want to eventually do a lookup on the data which is coming from the file system. Understand this? This is the data which is coming from the file system. Yes.
Yes.
Now this ID is common, right? The one which is coming from the Salesforce and the one which is coming from the file system, right? If using this ID, somehow I can do a lookup on the data which is coming from the source system, that is nothing but your file system, that is nothing but using disk connector, then I think I should be able to retrieve the revenue amount. But right now, the data which we read using the disk connector, is it like single file for all the accounts or a different file for each account?
Single file.
Single file.
Right? But when you want to do a lookup, right, you will have to make sure that each file is a different file, right? Each file is such that each has got one account data only, or one revenue for only one account. How can we make sure that each file has only?
Data process shape.
Data process shape.
So after this, can I add a data process shape?
Yes.
Yes.
Now I'll add a data process shape after this. Data process shape says what?
We have to split the document.
Split accounts.
Split documents. What is the profile type?
XML.
XML. Very nice.
XML.
So have we created a profile for this new data format so far?
No.
No, right? So I'll
No.
create a profile quickly, because without profile, how will you split? You can't. We go to the D drive and we will take this as a example. Next, finish. Now in this, when we imported this file, in the profile you see accounts, and within that you see 2 times account. So this is going to happen whenever you will use sample file for creating an XML profile. So what you should do, you should delete this account. And what should you do for this account?
Max occurs unbounded.
Very nice. We should make max occurs unbounded. This indicates that within this accounts, we can have numerous occurrences of account object. Yes. Is this clear to everyone? This is important.
Yes.
Okay. Now my profile is ready. And what should be the split element? Accounts or account?
Account.
Why account?
Because there will be multiple accounts.
Yes. Whichever element is going to be repetitive, that element has to be taken as a split element. Okay. You should not have any confusion about this. We'll save the stuff and first we'll test our process this month. And now you will realize that whatever splitting and all we learned earlier, right? These all things can be interlinked together, right? Each and every concept you are learning will be useful. The only thing you have to learn is the art of, combining things in the right fashion. And that will only happen once you do more practice. Okay. And you have to gradually develop that thought process. So I straight away come over here. I see two documents. Why two documents?
We split
We
the
had two documents in the
Because
exam.
we have only two accounts data, right? And each account is represented by one document. We can quickly take a look at it. 10,000 revenue for this one. All right. So this is done. Fine. Nice. Now I said if somehow I can do a lookup, right? So lookup is always done from some repository. Lookup. See what you will do. When can you do a lookup? Lookup can be done when you have stored something somewhere, right? So just when we started the session, when we started discussing about this use case, one of the ladies told that she did a lookup from the cross reference table. So cross reference table is like a repository, like where you have the data stored and you can go and do a lookup, right? So the point I'm trying to convey is the lookup can be done only when you store the data somewhere, isn't it? See, one mechanism can be that let's say somebody says you have a database. So I can probably store this data temporarily in the database and then can I do a lookup? I can do a lookup now. How can I do a lookup? I'll go
The
here
map function.
in the functions. Let's see what are the options we have for lookup. Do we have SQL lookup? Yes or no? Let's say I use a SQL lookup. Then it is asking me for the connections. I'll use my connection. Oracle database connection. Type is standard. Can I write a query over here? For example, select revenue from some intermediate table where account ID is equal to what? The one which will come from Salesforce. Can I do right like this if I can store that data into some database? Okay, let me show you. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking. This is important, not for this use case, but from your overall understanding standpoint. SQL Plus. And this way we will cover one of the certification question also. There is a constant background noise coming from someone. I'm just naming this as intermediate. Okay, you can name it a little better. I'm not good at giving the right names. Create table intermediate, and I'm saying let's say ID, which is varchar 200. Then what else? Revenue, which is number. Table created. Yes. So what I'm trying to tell you is I eventually want to do a lookup. So one way is I use this data and I push it into the database. So if I want to push into the database, I have to use which connector?
database.
Database connector. Action will be sent. Connection is already there. And what is the operation? We need to configure one, right? I'll say db insert. Okay, if the spelling mistakes are there, please ignore that. Statements. It will be dynamic insert, import. I think we have done this process now n number of times, so you must be aware that what we are doing over here. And this will be intermediate. So we are loading the database tables. We hit next. We select ID and revenue. Next, finish. Save and close. Save and close. Now what this all is done, what is the next thing? Can we push the data directly or we
No,
have to use map?
no mapping.
We need to do some mapping, right?
Yes.
So for this, so I will say map intermediate. For the source side, what will be the format?
XML accounts revenue.
Very nice. XML accounts revenue. So we'll go to the folder quickly. Which is that folder? This one, this one. So we have a lot of profiles now. We'll choose this one. And what about the target?
Database.
Database. Very nice.
Intermediate.
This one. We'll pass ID and we'll pass revenue. Save and close. Hit OK. Okay. Now I'll not run it right now because if I run it multiple times, it might create issues. Okay. It might create issues and you have to understand this. Okay. Or let me not run it for now. I'll tell you what are the issues with this approach. Now we get some data, we push it to the database. Now after this, the control will come to this. After branch 1 executes, control comes to the branch 2. Here
Yes.
you have option to do a. So there are two options. Whenever you want to talk with any target system, while you're doing the mappings in the map shape, and if you want to interact with any other application, what option do we have? We have something called as connector call, right? Isn't it?
Yes.
If I'm doing the mappings and while doing the mapping, I realize there is another field which I need to pull from some other system. One option we have is we can use connector call. Yes or no? Now this is an important certification question as well as interview question. Can we use connector call to pull the data from the database? Now a lot of people assume, like for example, yesterday I told you, right? We can pull the data from the Salesforce using connector call. A lot of people assume that, okay, when we go for the connector call option, let's say I selected this, I would get an option to select database connector also. Okay, even I used to assume at certain point of time. Now, when you go to the connector here, okay, I don't know if they, so if you see here, they have given an option for database V2, which is again under tech preview. But do you see that other database connection? Do you see the database connector, the original one or the one?
No.
Okay, this tech preview, whenever you say tech preview, these are not recommended to be used in your production. Okay. Tech preview means these are like beta versions. Okay. So you don't see that option. Maybe that V2 version they are bringing over here. But for database, you don't see an option because that is only available under the lookup. And that lookup has to be which type of lookup? SQL lookup. Yeah. So here, if you go to the connection, you will see you will get only option to choose which type of connections?
Database connection.
Database connections. Very nice. So now it is asking you this time that you have to write SQL. So you have to be good in writing SQL. If you're not good, you can first try over here. That's fine. Okay. So what is the name of the, what should be our query? Select revenue from where?
April.
Intermediate.
From intermediate, right? Where?
ID. Where?
ID is equal to what? We don't know. ID will keep on changing, right? So we'll write question mark. Question mark indicates a dynamic parameter. And that dynamic parameter value will come from the input. And I will give the input as, let's say, account ID. Okay. And what should be the output?
Revenue.
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 Revenue. Just make sure these names are matching. Okay. It is better. This one and this one. Okay. I'm
Can we
not
make
sure
the
if this is
revenue
mandatory.
number?
But account ID.
Can
For account ID, it's not mandate. Okay, this is a dynamic one. So it will work on the order. The first dynamic parameter will be picked from the first input.
we make that revenue number?
Oh, yeah, we can do that. Okay, we'll make it float. Is that fine? Because the number of data type, I think it will accept decimals. Not sure, but we can make float or number. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'll hit okay. Now from where the account ID will come?
From that SF.
ID.
Can we map like this? And can we map like this?
Yes.
Yes. Now save and close. Let me run the test. Okay, you didn't get any error. You didn't get any error. First of all, let's see what went over here. How many documents? 2 documents. First document has ID and revenue. Second document has ID and again the revenue, right? Fine. So the data must have gone over there. Let's check it over here. First of all, select star from intermediate. Can we see the revenue amount and the ID?
Yes.
Nice. It is working fine, right? So then what we try to do, we try to pull the data from Salesforce. And in this map, we try to do a lookup. Yes, we try to do a lookup. Can you see some connector calls over here? Yes or no?
Yes.
So there is this connector call is for which one?
United Oil.
This is for fetching the name. If you remember, you were doing a connector call, right? For fetching the name also.
Yeah, first. Yeah.
From the Salesforce, the one which we covered yesterday, where you were
Yes.
fetching the parent account name. And then do you see a SQL lookup?
Yeah. For ID.
In the SQL lookup, can you see some revenues being fetched? Yes or no? So if you
Yes.
see from here, your SQL lookup starts. In the SQL lookup, you see output element and your output is this one. So now when we go over here to this database connector, shape source, how many documents are there?
One document.
One by one, because
That
from
you need.
Salesforce, we were reading only one only, na? Yes or no? From Salesforce, we were reading one. For that one, it did a lookup. And now we see the data, which is finally generated after the map shape. We have the ID. We have the name. We have the parent account. We have the phone number. And do you see a revenue also? If you want to see more clearly, you can go here. You can write select star from. Can you see in the last record? You have got revenue also getting added. Yes.
Yes.
But now let's do one thing. So what is the name of the table? Intermediate table, which we added. Why we named that table intermediate? Because that is only required for that specific processing. Now, once this execution is over, do we need the records which are there in that table?
No.
Intermediate table. Ideally, that should get flushed out, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Ideally, that should get flushed out. If that does not get flushed out, what is the issue which might happen is, let's check now. So now what is going to happen? Again, we are executing the process. This first branch, will it try to insert the data one more time?
Yes.
So in intermediate, how many records will get? 4, right? But should we get 4? No, right? Are you understanding why we are getting 4 now? 2 were there already in the last execution, and again you inserted 2 more. Yes or no? You did a lookup. Okay, not this one. You go to the map shape, you did a lookup, you're able to fetch the revenue, but can you see this intermediate table is giving you the wrong data? Yes or no? So the point I'm trying to tell you is this can be one of the approaches, but and ideally, first of all, we cannot go and use any database. Okay, because it may happen that in my project I may not have the access to the database. Okay, and whenever we talk with any external system, right, for these kind of operations, it will deteriorate the performance also, right? So we cannot go and push the data into any database and then use it. This can be one of the approaches, but it is not a recommended approach because first of all, using an external system, you cannot take that decision. Okay, you are like, let's say, an integration guy, so you only can use the components which are there in Boomi. In some projects, if your business gives you that permission, you can use it, but then that will again deteriorate the performance. Even if you want to use this approach, one more step which you should typically do is, what is that? You added the data into the intermediate table, you did the mapping, and after that flush out the data from the intermediate table. How can you flush out? When I say flush out, what exactly do we need to do?
Delete.
Delete the data from the intermediate table. Are you guys understanding why I'm asking to delete? Because
Yes.
that data was relevant for this, right? See, when you will start getting issues, right now you are not getting issues, but you will definitely start getting issues. Let's say for the same account ID, in 1 month the revenue amount was 10,000. For same account ID, in the next month the revenue was, let's say, 50,000. So we are not sure that for one account there are 2 records, which one it will pick up. Yes or no? Or else you will need to add some date or some other parameter, right? Because you cannot rely only on the account ID to make that unique. Maybe you will add something like execution ID. Can you add execution ID? You can
Yes.
add, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, but then the better approach is, since that is an intermediate table that was just required for that specific processing. So you needed the table only for one specific execution or not? Yes. So one thing we can do is we can flush out that. So for flushing out, which connector do I need again?
Database.
I need database, right? But apart from the database connector, there is one more shape which will help you to perform the operations on the database. So database connector is definitely one choice, but there is one more shape which can help you to perform certain operations on the database. And that shape is a program command shape. There is a shape called as a program command shape, which will help you to perform some database operations. You cannot perform all, but you can perform some database operations. And what are those some database operations? Only the operations that does not involve the retrieval from the database. The operations which will not return any data back from the database can be also performed using program command shape. So what are the operations which returns the document?
Select.
Very nice. Select. So that means we cannot perform select operation with
Command prompt.
program command shape. So if you read, the program shape enables the database and system level commands to be executed as part of the flow. So we can use this. So I'm saying SQL statement. Okay. Okay. I will choose a connection, which is over here. And what is my, can I write like this?
Yes.
Star from
Table name is correct.
intermediate.
It should be intermediate.
Okay. If you're not sure, you can try this once here. Yes, it is working fine. Okay, this is working fine. So the statement looks to be fine. I'll hit OK. Save. I'll run the test again. Okay. So with this statement, what's going to happen? With this first branch, what's going to happen?
Insert the data.
In second branch,
It will it will insert the data into accounts data, mapping after mapping.
yes, we'll merge the data and that, enriched the data. The terminology we use is enriched, because you started with data and you're enriching the data with something else. So that enriched data is inserted into the database, and eventually you are deleting the data from the intermediate table. So now can we go and quickly check intermediate table? Do we have anything?
No.
So whatever was required for processing, we inserted that, we did our stuff and we deleted that. But right now we are relying on some external memory to store that data.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
So it is recommended to use this kind of solution. It is recommended to use this kind of solution. But instead of external memory, can we replace this external memory with some internal memory based solution? Is what we need to understand. Answer is yes, there is one possibility. And what is that possibility?
Cache.
That you use cache, because cache, as I told, is in memory. In memory means the memory which is there with Boomi, the same memory can be used, right? So Boomi is using some JDK, JVM. So there will be internal heap memory. And if we try to use that, then it is better. But this can be also one solution. I don't want you to mug up things. I want you to understand the concept, that what is the meaning of lookup. When I say external repository, what is the meaning? And when we say lookup, it is not only about the cache lookup. We can do SQL lookup also. We can do cross reference table lookup also. But we have to understand in which use case which will fit in, right? So we achieve the same use case with the SQL lookup also, right? But now let's say this database is not available with us, right? Then we cannot say that we will not be able to do it, right? We'll have to find some solution. So I'll just move these shapes away. We had split it, and now which one do we need?
Cache.
We will see what all is there related to cache.
Cache.
Do we have add to cache? Yes. We have retrieve and we have remove. So remove was required or not required? If you see, you deleted, right? So that is more like removing from cache. You inserted the data, that is like
Add to cache.
add to cache. And here within the map shape, you did a lookup, that is more like,
Retrieve from cache.
so these are the three same operations you did or not? You added, you retrieved, and you removed. Are you guys understanding the correlation?
Yes, Smith.
So first we will go to add to cache. So add to cache is a shape which will add the data to the cache. But for before we add the data to the cache, what should exist? Before adding the data to the database, first of all, you have to have the database, right? Similarly, when you want to add the data to the cache, before that, you have to create a cache, isn't it? So when I double click over here, it is asking me to refer which component?
Document cache.
Document cache component. Have we created document cache component so far?
No.
No.
No, no. So we'll create one. So this is document cache, and which data it is going to store? I will say
Revenue.
So generally you write like this: revenue cache, maybe revenue amount, something like this. Okay, very nice. What type of data it will store?
XML.
Very nice, XML. Do you have the profile?
Accounts revenue. We have to create. Yeah.
We created na revenue file didn't get deleted, right? Then there is an option enforce one index entry per document. Enforce one index entry per document. What is index? Indexes are like in your books you will have index, right, to refer some pages. So these are like shortcuts created to refer the data from the memory. So I will say add index. Let's say my index name is some ID. You can give any name, whatever you, and I'm saying my index. So index generally will be kind of a unique key. Okay. I mean, it is not mandatory, but generally it will be unique key. So I'm saying my index is the profile element. And which is that profile element? Account ID. Because basically this indexes will help you at a later stage in the retrieval of the data. Yes. Or you can say faster retrieval of the data. And this will help to identify your data uniquely. So let us understand again. There was a profile type. There was a profile and then there is an option enforce one index entry per document. If you read out the info over here, ensures that each cached document produces at most one index entry, which means the document which you're pushing, right, should have how many IDs? Only one ID at a time. You cannot have more than one ID at a time. In our case, will we have a document which has more than one account ID?
Uh, no, because we have splitted the document.
Very nice. The reason is we will not have it because we have already split it. But if we didn't split, then if we check this flag, it would have given error because this flag is saying this flag ensures that each cached document produces at most one index entry. And what is your index? Account ID. If you are giving the original document, how many account IDs you will have?
2.
So
Two, right? If you check this flag, then okay, let me show you rather than keep on speaking. Let me show you and you will understand. Let's say I don't split the data. These all things are important to understand, guys. Let's say I don't split the data, I save and I run the test. So what are the configurations we did in cache? Document type, I mean the profile type, then we chose the profile. And then there was a checkbox enforce one index entry per document, which we clicked on, which we checked the checkbox. And then we added the index. Index is like some unique, it can be one or more unique combination of unique identifiers in a document that will help in the faster or the easy retrieval of the data. And whenever you want to identify a specific, so in cache, let's say you have hundreds of documents and you want to retrieve something specific, then you can do it only on the basis of an ID, right? So let's say there is a room in which 100 people are sitting, right? And you want to call out one person individually. Then do you need some ID? Do you need to know the name or something? Maybe Aadhaar card number, maybe the passport number, maybe the election card number, something you might need to know, right? To call that person. Similarly, you are pushing so many documents. Now you want to retrieve that one document specifically. If you want to retrieve all, if there are 100 people sitting in a room and you want to call all of them, do you need to know the ID of any person individually? No, right? You can say all of you please come in. But when you want to call one person individually, you need to have some unique identifier, and that's why that index is required. I mean, but right now this is failing. And why this is failing?
Because it has multiple account IDs.
Because you check that flag. Let me go back. You check that flag and that flag said enforce one index entry per document, but that is not true. I uncheck this. This option is required if you plan to retrieve all documents from the document cache or remove specific documents by index name. So what it is saying is, if you want to retrieve all the documents, okay, if you want to retrieve all the documents from the document cache or remove some specific document, then this is required. I will say, okay, I will live without it. I'll say save and close. I'll just run the test. Okay, I'll just remove the connectivity with other branches for now. I want to test this part. So now this works fine. Because why it is working fine? Because now the document which was going as an input, the document which was going as an input has how many?
2 accounted.
2 account IDs, right? But what did you say over here?
We unchecked the box.
We haven't checked the box. We are saying enforce one index entry per document. No, because we knew that our document has more than one index entries. Now let's say we follow this approach. Okay, we are new to this, we follow this approach only, that is fine. Okay, let's forget about splitting. Now what happens is we have a map shape. Yes, in the map shape, so we added the data to the document. Oh sorry, we added the data to the cache. Now what is the second step?
Look up for cache.
Lookup. So instead of using SQL lookup this time, I will try to do which lookup?
Document
Document
cache.
cache.
Path to lookup.
I'll go again to the lookup and I will see, is there an option to look up from the document cache? So this is more like retrieving the data from the cache. Okay. It is more like retrieve. This operation is as good as retrieving the document from cache. So now when you want to retrieve it, from which cache do you want to retrieve? You have to select that.
Account.
There is an index. Yes. And what is the output you need? You need the
Revenue.
and you're mapping the revenue over here. Yes. So now let's save and run it. Let's save and run it and see what is the behavior. Okay, did you get any error? No, right? So in the cache, what were you trying to push?
Revenue file.
Account ID and revenue.
But there was a single file which was holding the data for all the accounts, right? And now when you come here in the logs for the map shape, there, do you see there is some document cache lookup? Yes. And what is the output? What is the output it is saying?
Nothing.
Null. But why it is saying null?
Because it has multiple account IDs.
It has multiple accounts and it is not able to identify that account uniquely is what I feel is the root cause. Let us check that one more time. I'll go here. Okay, no, I think we forgot to do this mapping, isn't it? We didn't do this mapping, isn't it? I was wondering why it is coming as null. This mapping is required, right? Yes.
Yes, Sumit.
Okay, I'll run it again. So now with this cache, one thing which is good is, as long as the process execution is there, the data will be there in the cache. And the moment the process execution is over, the data will be removed from the cache. I'll again go to the map. I'll again go here. What is the amount you're getting?
100K revenue.
100K. Okay. Was it 100K for your ID? It was 100K only, na?
Yes.
So it is working absolutely fine in this case. isn't it? So you had 100K and it is working absolutely fine. Now let me do one thing. In this one, there is a parameter, right? Can we change this ID to this one? Because this is also one of the valid IDs, isn't it? From the Salesforce. We have been playing only with one account data, right? But we can have different accounts coming in real time, right? So now I'm
Yes.
trying to use a different account.
Mhm.
I'll run the test again. Okay, I'll run the test again here in the cache. First of all, let's see what went in. So there is no change in the first process. Yes. Now it went to this one. And do you see there is some error? Okay, it is saying error received. First of all, where it failed right now? Salesforce get operation. It failed in the Salesforce get operation. We'll see why it failed in the get operation. Okay, let us look at it. What is happening in the Salesforce get operation? It is trying to, what is it trying to do, guys?
Based on the ID, it was getting the name.
Account.
So if you see the SOCL, it is trying to get ID, name, the parent ID, phone. Okay. So it is trying to get all these details, right?
Mhm.
Yes. And which is the ID we gave?
In this,
This is the ID we gave, right? So that query is being executed against this ID. So what we'll do is we'll go to this one, Salesforce, and we'll try to see whether it is a really valid ID or not. And if it is a valid ID, what is the issue? Can I replace that ID like this? So this seems to be a valid ID only, right? This ID is for which account? Testing.
Testing only. Okay.
Maybe in the Salesforce connector, in the operation, we gave only one account to be retrieved.
No, actually, it doesn't matter. We are doing the retrieval on the basis of IDs, right?
Okay.
As long as it is a valid ID, it does not care ideally. So we have here given an operation. Oh, sorry, this is a connection. And here we have given an operation, and operation we reuse. If you remember, we are trying to fetch ID, name, parent ID, phone from account. So I think ID is there, name is there, parent. Even if parent ID is not there, it should not have given an error. Let me check. So right now the parent account is not there. Ideally, I don't think this should give an error, but for the time being, just let's populate any parent account. Okay. Because we are trying to retrieve four things, right? ID, what else? Name, parent account, and the phone number. Yes. All four things are there now. Let me try to run it one more time. I don't think that parent account being not there should have given an issue, but let me try one more time. Do you see now it is working? I think it was that issue was coming because of the parent ID only. Okay. The parent ID was not available. That's why maybe the issue was coming. Now you are not getting that error. We'll go to the map logs. So first connector call is there. Output element. Did you get the parent account? Actually, the error I think was coming because you are trying to pull the parent account, and parent account itself was null. That's why it was erring out. It is not because in the query we have parent ID, because we are trying to output which element? Parent account only, right? And that was coming as null. That's why it was erring out. But right now we want to see document cache lookup. What is the revenue you are seeing?
Has not changed. It has to be 500K.
It had to be
500K.
500K, right? But did it change?
No.
It didn't change, right? So that means the implementation which you did with the cache is not working as expected. And the reason why it is not working as expected is you pushed a full document at a time. And what it will do is it will always return you the first revenue. Okay, it is not doing the exact lookup. It is doing a lookup, but it is not doing a lookup based on the ID, because for ID you have multiple occurrences and it will always return you the first revenue. So what is the option we have? We will go here and we'll try to split it. So when we split it, what happens? We ensure that each document which is split has only one index entry. So now if you don't check it, that's fine, but it's better if you check it, because if there will be something wrong with your data set, it will stop the flow here itself. Now let me run it again. We execute it, we go to map shape. In the map shape, now what is the output? 500K. So if you go to the cache, what is going as an input? Two different documents. One is with this ID and another one with the second ID. And that is the ID which is actually being used right now in the second branch, right? So we wanted this revenue to be pulled, and that was not happening when we had the complete data set in a single document. But the moment we split, we have two different documents going in. And when we try to do a lookup in this map shape, if you go to the logs, you see the document cache lookup, the output is 500K, which is the required revenue. Now the third thing was removing the data from cache. If you want, you can do it explicitly, or that is implicitly taken care. Okay, that is implicitly taken care, so you don't need to do that explicitly. The moment execution is over, it will automatically flush out all the cache. Then you might ask me, in that case, why do we need this remove from cache? That is only required when you want in the middle of the flow your cache to be cleaned up. So let's say you're doing one operation, then second operation, then so many operations you're doing, but you don't want your data to reside in the memory for so long, and you realize that I don't need this data. Why can't I go and flush it? Then in that case, you can go and explicitly flush it. If you want to flush it out, what you will do? You will use third branch and you will say remove from cache. So when you want to remove, you have to select the cache name, which is this one, and you have option. You want to choose some selective ID, or you want to remove all the documents. I would say I want to remove all the documents. Okay, but understand one thing, this cache memory is going to be flushed out after every execution. So whatever you pushed into the cache is only available for this specific execution. It will not be there for other executions. Okay, for every execution, there will be separate cache memory which will be there. We'll continue talking on this. I know this is a little complex, but I hope when I started with that database example, you can do some correlation. We first added the data, same thing we are doing over here.
Yes.
Then we retrieved, same thing we are doing over here. Then we cleaned up the memory. Sorry. Then we cleaned up the memory using program command shape, and here we are using remove from cache. When you're working in real time, you will have to play around with cache very extensively. So please try this example. And I think we overcross our time a lot. We'll just take a pause over here and then we'll continue.